Sent in by Max, who listens to us on WMNF radio in Tampa, Florida. He asks whether the super rich, the billionaires, the CEOs, who live at those incredible standards of living, are threatened by the rest of us, those of us who have to worry about our jobs, our incomes, our housing, our children's school debts, and all the rest of it. Do they want us to be uncomfortable? What's going on here? How does this inequality, as gross as it is in the United States now, how does it survive? Well, I think the answer is that those at the top have an arsenal of stories they tell themselves, or they hire people to write and tell them those stories over and over again to comfort them. And you know why they have to be comfort? Because somewhere they know that there but for the grace of, etc., that they have a lot and other people don't worries them. They worry because they may have a religious or ethical or moral notion that we are all equal, we human beings, that we all live, get born, die, that we may be, if we're religious, equal in the creator of us all. These kinds of ideas make you feel a considerable amount of guilt. You may not admit it, neither to yourself nor to others, but it sits there. That's why the stories I'm about to remind you of get told. Here's one. It's always been this way. Wealthy people have been the few at the top and the rest of it. All not true. The overwhelming bulk of the history of the human race is the history of people living in families, clans, tribes, villages, and so on, where there was little or no difference among the people in terms of standard of living. For thousands of years, things like animals and land was communally and collectively worked and owned, if property meant anything to those people, which for many, many millennia it didn't. Private property is relatively new in human history, and gross inequality is also, therefore, quite new in the long span of human history. 50 years ago, we in the United States congratulated ourselves on a capitalism that had created, we said, a great middle class. Well, there were always people who didn't quite make it into that middle class, particularly if they weren't white. But we had a fairly large one. We've lost most of that in the last 50 years. We now really are a them and us, very rich and the rest of us. Are they worried about this? You bet. They're worried because whenever you have that kind of inequality, you have conflict, envy, jealousy, tension, and explosive social difficulties. And of course, they're worried. Are they worried that we might want to redistribute the wealth? Of course they are, because we do. Because anybody in that situation would. Sure, they will tell you stories that we don't have the wealth they do because there's something wrong with us. We, the majority, are defective in some way. They, the minority of the super rich, are super capable, or super smart, or super well educated, or super white, or super something, because they have to comfort themselves about the inequality. Well, what to be done about it? Well, there's really two plans. That's all. Many different forms, but two plans. One plan is to redistribute the wealth. Take it from those who have too much and give it to those who don't have enough. It isn't all that complicated. There are thousands of ways human beings in the past found to do that, and we are smart enough today to rediscover them all and to decide which ones to use if we were to go that way. But I think I have a better plan. Don't redistribute the wealth. Don't distribute it unequally in the first place. We will have a better society, better relationships amongst us, less likelihood that those who have will use their wealth to force activities out of the rest of us we wouldn't otherwise freely choose to do. Do we have discrimination? You bet. Do we have sexual and other kinds of harassment? You bet. I could go on, and you can see the logic, what connects them to inequality. So here's my plan. Distribute the wealth we all help to produce roughly equally amongst us. Then there won't have to be fights over redistribution, in which we can and often do get very ugly with one another in ways nobody wants. So distribute more equally, and we won't have to have this conversation again with all the tension and trouble it usually involves. I hope this has been interesting, and again, my thanks to Max for providing us with a very good question worth thinking about.